views expressed on this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and are not necessarily those of this station, its management, or other advertisers. You're listening to Transformation Talk Radio.
Get fired up for Spirit Fire Radio with your hosts, Dorothy, Riddle, and Steve Kramer. Get ready to shine the light on universal spiritual principles and uncover ways that ageless wisdom can guide you in cultivating consciousness in these modern times. Bring purpose to your life through practical spirituality and add to your awareness with Spirit Fire Radio. Now, here are your hosts, Dorothy, Riddle, and Steve Kramer.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to another episode of Spirit Fire Radio. My name is Steve Kramer. It's a delight to be with you and a delight to be with my co-host, Dr. Dorothy Riddle. Hey, Dorothy.
Hi, Steve. Glad to be here.
Always a treat, and I always look forward to our juicy conversations. Listeners, we're talking about forgiveness for the entire month of November. And if last week's show is any clue into the sort of complexity of our discussion all month, boy, stick around because we really revealed that the complexity with forgiveness and what a process it is and how it can really provide so much access to understanding ourselves and building strong relationships. Dorothy, before we get into this segment, we're going to talk about forgiving ourselves and forgiving others. Thought it'd be wonderful just to talk a bit about this collaboration. Do you want to give it a go?
Sure. So listeners, this is an intentional collaboration between our two educational nonprofits. I'm with the School for Esoteric Studies, and we provide esoteric discipleship training to persons wanting to deepen their spiritual practice. We do it through meditation, study, and service. And you can find out more about us and our work and the training that we provide at esotericstudies.net. That's esotericstudies.net. And one of the things you'll see on our website is a section about intergroup collaboration because we want to actively collaborate with other like-minded groups. And we're absolutely delighted that we have this collaboration going on with Spirit Fire.
Indeed, it's been utterly joyful and interesting. I've learned so much as that's, I think, what life is really about, right? Expanding our horizons, learning a bit about ourselves, about others, and being creative together. Spirit Fire, which is an organization which I represent and bring to the table of this collaboration, is an educational nonprofit. We focus on educating people on the importance of spirituality and showing them ways that they can integrate awareness and consciousness into their everyday lives. We do that through online programs, through our own meditation practice, which is offered online and at our Meditative Retreat Center in Western Massachusetts. So you can find out more about all of that. Our practice is called The Practice of Living Awareness, and all of that is available at our website at spiritfire.com. Dorothy, it always stands out when you talk about the School for Esoteric Studies when you say discipleship training. And I just want to mention that word discipleship, and to me, and perhaps you'll say just a little bit more, and I'll tell you why. Because discipleship is really about discipline, right? Those two words are together, and what really stood out last week for me in talking about forgiveness in that show was really that forgiveness is a process and that it is an act that takes energy. It takes effort. It takes conscious effort, and therefore it takes discipline. We mentioned that quote, to err is human, to forgive divine. Well, it seems that all roads that lead to the divine are roads that take discipline. That's why it's called discipleship, right?
That's right. And one can think of it also as a conscious commitment to a spiritual practice. It doesn't have to be any one particular spiritual practice, and certainly within the School for Esoteric Studies, we have no particular requirement that people come from a particular spiritual or religious tradition, but rather it's that commitment to the common good, the commitment to goodwill, to right relations with other people, to bringing that into everyday life.
Beautiful. I just wanted to bring that up because it is a commitment, which forgiveness is really a commitment. I think it's the ones who just say, "I'm never going to forgive someone," forget it.
Mm-hmm.
It is really not it is just a signing off, and in a sense not taking responsibility for one's own well-being. And there were many instances in just really pondering and doing some research on forgiveness that said, basically, it's essential to creating goodwill, and that the two are related. It is,
and it.
Oh, go on.
Well, and it's critical to our own well-being.
Yes.
So goodwill and well-being also.
So a quote, Dorothy. We always start off with a quote. I was about to read a quote, and I thought, oh, mate, you might just have to forgive me because I was going to jump right in. But
okay,
you have one in the wings.
I'm going to give you two.
Oh, awesome.
The first one is by Bernard Meltzer, who said, "When you forgive, you in no way change the past, but you sure do change the future," which I think is really interesting. I'm not sure I agree entirely that you don't change the past, because I think you can heal your memory of the past. But anyway, the second quote is from Maya Angelou, and I think we actually have it on the website. It's one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself, to forgive. Forgive everybody, she says. And I think when we talk about it from the perspective of health and freeing up energy, it certainly is a critical ability, is the willingness to engage in forgiveness.
Well, and it brings back that word forgive. It is about it is for giving. And so I think it's an interesting quote from Maya Angelou, where she says that it's the greatest gift you can give yourself, because when we think about forgiving another, we often think, well, it's for the other, but actually it frees up so much within ourselves that it's really a gift for us. We are giving to ourselves when we forgive. So forgive everybody, she says, right?
Right.
Allow for everybody. But I think the first quote sort of is reminiscent of quite a bit of what we talked about last week, which was that forgiving is not condoning. And we know we're not going to go deep into that today, because we certainly want to get on to this idea of ourselves and others in that relationship. But when Mr. Meltzer says, when you forgive, you're not changing the past, he's sort of saying, well, it still exists. The crime or the offense or the error is still there. But you allow for the future. You allow for flow, for movement, because you've freed your snags, or you've freed limitations that were set by that offense.
So if we think about the process of forgiving someone else, let me just outline a couple of those, because I think there's a lot to talk about here. First, we have to be very clear about who it is that we're forgiving and what we're forgiving them for. What is it that occurred, really? What is it that has that energy tied up inside us? And we need to acknowledge the feelings that we have about it, not just when it happened, but what are the feelings that we still hold? And then
very important, very, very important.
Yeah, and then we need to be clear with ourselves about why we are forgiving. What is the benefit for us to forgive? And I think that recognizing that we are giving a gift to ourselves, we are providing ourselves with a benefit, is really critical. And then we need to release the feelings that we have, our attachment to victimhood, to having been harmed. And typically, in between this stating the benefit and the permanent release is the step to commit publicly that we are forgiving the person. I'm not convinced that that is critical. I think I've been in a number of situations, and I think we'll talk about it some later in this program, situations where the circumstance had passed, the institution or the group that created the harm are not physically standing in front of me in order to forgive. The issue is really the internal healing that I'm doing.
Yeah.
At least for me, that's the critical piece.
I would agree. And clarity. I love that you said that word clarity because, that resentment and anger, it just causes distortion within our system. And the act of forgiving and even acknowledging and this process of which is why it's so good to have people around, to talk to. When it's really so much of it all, as well as just not keeping it all inside and being able to talk and share. And I think that's part of the also public. Being public is actually just willing to ask for support so that we can begin this process and actually see clearly, what happened and who do I need to forgive and why? And why am I doing it? What will the benefits be? All of that, just asking that immediately brings clarity, right? And we've talked quite a bit on many shows about it creates options, which creates hope. And definitely hopefulness can bring us out of a dark place that we may find ourselves in if we have been the victim of some kind of offense. Dorothy, we're already at a break.
Oh, my goodness. Okay.
We're already at a break. I could sense you were really going to get started again. Beautiful. So listen, you hold that thought, and we're going to just go to some quick messages. And when we come back, we'll pick up right where we left off.
Stay juicy. Tune in to Your Juicy Love with me, Una Drake, co-hosting monthly with Dr. Pat, and every second Monday at 12 p.m. on Transformation Talk Radio. My show, Your Juicy Love, helps you find the dynamic, life-affirming love you've always wanted. Transform your relationships and bring peace, joy, and juicy, juicy love to planet Earth. For more information, visit unadrake.com.
Tune into the wisdom of your soul for guidance on living a joyful life. On Soul Wisdom Radio, Wendy will provide inspiration to raise your vibration and connect with your higher self and guides. Learn how to balance your ego and to progress spiritually on Soul Wisdom Radio with Wendy Rose Williams. Visit wendyrosewilliams.com or Transformation Talk Radio to learn more about a healing session with Wendy and her events and publications.
Now you can be a part of one of the most powerful programs to help create a more joyful, loving, abundant, and peaceful world. Every day at 12 noon in any time zone, join millions of other people around the world to spend a few minutes in joy, love, and gratitude. Brought to you by Robert Schoenfeld, host of the Art of Powerful Living Radio. Together, we can raise the vibration of the planet. For more information, visit globalmomentofjoy.com.
The Janice Underwood Show, helping you create the life you want, not the life you tolerate. Tune in each Monday, 9 a.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio as Janice delves into the life creator system and the next step in your spiritual evolution. Janice Underwood is gifted at helping spiritually minded people shift their mindsets to unleash the creator within. Our souls wish to wake us up. Those of us listening hear the call. Do you? For more information, visit janiceunderwood.com.
What is a brilliant culture, and how do we create them? Why are they important? Claudette Rowley has created a breakthrough 5-step process to help you align your culture with your business strategy for exceptional results. Looking for a culture that drives organizational excellence? Listen to Cultural Brilliance Radio, the second and fourth Friday of each month at 10 a.m. Pacific and 1 p.m. Eastern on Transformation Talk Radio. To learn more or work with Claudette, visit culturalbrilliance.com.
Be you plus live your purpose equals joy. That's the motto of Unstuck Joy with Vicki Todd. Vicki believes you were born with gifts that are meant to make the world brighter. Each show will feature an art visioning journal prompt to help you create your way to soul clarity. If you're ready to get unstuck and create more joy, this show is for you.
Tune in the first and third Tuesday at 3 p.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio. For more information, visit VickiWorldArt.com.
Welcome back, listeners. Dorothy and I are continuing our conversation on forgiveness. And in this episode, talking a bit about forgiving ourselves and forgiving others and the relationship between the two. But Dorothy, right before the break, you were about to say something. Do you remember what we were going to?
Yes, I was. I wanted to bring up the dynamic that oftentimes if we are publicly forgiving someone, I mean, it doesn't have to be a large public, but the other person is there, we can also often have this feeling of wanting the other person to apologize or ask for forgiveness or acknowledge that they did something wrong. And I think that this is very tricky ground because it gets very close to, if it in fact doesn't tip over into wanting to punish the other person, wanting to humiliate them in some small way, make them grovel in some way, and then we will magnanimously forgive them, which is really not what forgiveness is all about. Forgiveness is about releasing and not allowing what happened in the past to control our life and our energy. And so in a certain, it can help if somebody spontaneously acknowledges that they and that gets into the whole thing of what is an appropriate apology. But I think it's important to recognize that if we are truly forgiving, what we're doing is we are recognizing, naming what happened and letting it go.
Yeah. It's almost a way of putting it outside of ourselves if we've got a sort of a proper alignment and the capacity to do that. Mm-hmm. And I sense that when you were saying about somebody groveling, it really comes down to then wanting to control them in the way that you sense or perceive, or in actuality, they controlled you, or still have control over your emotions. And so I find that one sort of, first off, we've just got to become aware of when we're feeling that there's a need. Sometimes we have resentment or we're sort of angry at somebody and we don't even know why. And I mean, as we said before, there's just a full range of circumstances in which forgiveness is necessary. But we first got to realize, that, okay, someone's done us wrong. Like, really feel it. And you feel it in your stomach, which I find interesting because your stomach is related. It's the seat of our emotions, is the solar plexus, and that's our stomach. And our, can I stomach what was done to me, right? We hold a lot in our solar plexus. Can I stomach this situation? Can I stomach being around this person who has offended me? And you think of the liver, we think, I get livid, right? I'm livid at what was done to me. Or our gallbladder, the gall of somebody, right? All of our intestines related to our internal organs related to our digestive system is all about processing. How do I process this process of forgiveness? How do I process what happened? Even our intestines, since I mentioned them, that is all about assimilating. Can I really find the right place for all that I have taken on or that has been, put on my system. So it really is a process, and we really just have to be self-aware of what's going on within ourselves, just to see, I think, is really one of the first steps, right? Is in forgiving others, is really becoming aware of ourselves.
Well, and I want to just step back a moment to that first, process of clarity about what happened, and that's the truth part. And I want to link it to the Me Too movement that's going on right now, and how empowering it can be of others to name what has happened to you. And what's critical is, and I've seen some very interesting dialogue about this online, is to name it, to be clear about that, and yet not be caught in an eternal loop of being the victim of what happened. And so it doesn't mean that you condone it, doesn't mean that it's okay, it doesn't mean that it goes away, but it does mean that we owe ourselves the gift of freeing ourselves from that dynamic.
Absolutely, and that Me Too, am I getting it right? All of a sudden, my brain just went blank. But that also just brings us into group again. I know the all of these sort of stories and these people coming out and really sharing and naming this people who have had sexual assaults, that experience. They all seem to say there was a wonderful article by Lupita Nyong'o, who talked about her experience with Harvey Feinstein and just basically saying, who would want to hear my story? I didn't think anybody would want to hear it, and or would care, or would have compassion or empathy for me, or think it was the truth. And so there's so much about saying it and finding that this is a group experience, and that knowing you're not alone, and that you really can be empowered by shared experience, and by finding solutions as a group and ways to move beyond. So there's a group aspect. And when we've been affronted or assaulted, we keep talking about it sort of pinching us off, but we do feel, in a sense, disconnected, not only from ourselves, but from people at large. Right?
That's right. Yeah. And there's an aspect, just to transition ourselves into the forgiving ourselves. There can be an aspect, I know for me, having been someone who was the target of sexual abuse, there is that whole dynamic of thinking, could I have done something differently? Could I have avoided it? Could I have seen it coming? Could I have spoken out sooner? All of that kind of second guessing. And so there's a forgiving of self that you did, I did the best that I knew to do in the circumstances. Yes. And so, in relation to what has been done to us. But then there's the things that we ourselves create, that we ourselves do. And again, it's being clear with ourselves of what is it that we did, and what was the consequence for the other person and for ourselves of having been harmful to somebody else.
And so it's clarity again. It comes back to a process of clearing distortions and coming to understand ourselves and others, right? And that brings me always to empathy, because once we have an understanding of ourselves and we really process it, we can then empathize with another. And that is the heart, that empathy and compassion. Once again, we come back to the heart. Dorothy, it makes me think of Ho'oponopono. I just want to mention that. We just have a few minutes before the break. And because listeners might really be interested, or if you do know about this Hawaiian healing practice called Ho'oponopono, it is pure magic. It is like white magic in that it is transformative. We mentioned that in the first segment or the first show about forgiveness, that essentially it's tough work, but it is transformative. And this is it was a tradition used by Hawaiian families. If there was wrongdoing, they would get together in a family and they would sort of discuss. They would set right these relationships, and it was all about prayer and discussion, about restitution and about forgiveness. And there are these 4 statements that go with Ho'oponopono. It is, I'm sorry, I love you. Please forgive me. I thank you. And these 4 statements are just repeated 3 times, and there's lots of processes within Ho'oponopono. You can take that into it into meditation. But very quickly, I had an ex who was in a terrible accident that he broke his neck and was left paralyzed. And we were together for many years, and he had an addiction that was all-consuming, and it split us up. I tried everything I could in my power, between everything I could to bring light to that situation and to his experience and his addiction. It just wouldn't work. And that was it. I could no longer be true to myself and be in the relationship, and stayed very close friends with him, and but not together intimately. And shortly thereafter, he had a horrible accident where he broke his neck, and it was in some ways I personally felt related to the addiction and lessons that on a soul level he was learning. But there was a tremendous guilt that I felt, if I had stuck with him, if I had been there, if that scenario wouldn't have happened, if we were together. And it was this whole process. I didn't even realize that I had to forgive myself. And someone turned to me and said, these four phrases, I'm sorry, I love you, please forgive me, I thank you, they changed everything for me. And it's called Ho'oponopono. And this idea of saying, I'm sorry, I love you, it is as much for the other person as it is for you. And please forgive me, I thank you. And the I thank you is thanking yourself for forgiving yourself, thanking them for forgiving you. And what you realize is we're all part of this, this diamond. We're just facets of this diamond that is the one life. And goodness, it is almost always true that when we forgive someone else, we're really on some level forgiving ourselves. And an aspect of separation that occurred within ourselves brought about a situation where we were in separation, and forgiveness is necessary somewhere. So, Dorothy, we're going to go to a break, but I just wanted to bring that in because Ho'oponopono is such a really lovely process, and like magic, almost like alchemy. It just shifted everything in me, and I found that love for myself and for him, and could be there for him in my fullness. So, thank you for allowing me to share that. Dorothy, we're going to go to a break. When we come back, more about forgiveness. We'll be right back.
Winning at the game of money. Lynn Brown is now offering Full Spectrum Finance, a progressive 12-month program that will help you to navigate through the mechanics of financial expansion. Finally, a financial planner who looks at the full spectrum of money and abundance. Engage you in the mental, physical, and energetic aspects of finance. This is Full Spectrum Finance. Are you ready to get into it? For more information, go to fullspectrumfinance.com.
To see your life from an angel's perspective, book a personal consultation with Claire Candy Huff, angelic walk-in angel Ariel at Angel Healing House. Candy provides intuitive counseling, Reiki, and angel readings in person in Los Angeles or nationally and internationally via phone or Skype. She will channel the practical tools you need to transform your life. Call now, 831-277-3716, or visit angelhealinghouse.com.
Did you know that all of the shows on the Transformation Radio Network are available as podcasts to stream or download?
Really?
Check us out. Go to transformationradio.fm. We have business shows, spiritual shows, energy healing shows, and pretty much everything in between. Something for everyone, guaranteed to inspire, educate, and transform. We are transforming the world, one listener at a time.
Integrate spirituality into your everyday lives on Universe Soul Heart Radio. Tune in each month on Transformation Talk Radio as Kathleen Johnson explores the concept of sensible spirituality, keeping you grounded, connected, and centered on the path to wholeness. Kathleen has dedicated her life to facilitating holistic healing and wholeness in others. Listen to Universe Soul Heart Radio and learn how to flourish, grow, and impact all we do on planet Earth. For more information, go to universesoulheart.net.
What if your body and mind were the compasses to the secrets, mysteries, and magic of life? Glenna Rice, co-host of The Questionable Parent, is inviting you to access all that is possible. Glenna is a 10-year certified veteran access consciousness facilitator who offers an amazing variety of life-changing classes and workshops. Work with Glenna from anywhere with teleclasses and workshops all over the globe. To learn more and see Glenna's current schedule of events, classes, and workshops, visit glennarice.com.
Choose the new earth on the Cornelia Stephanie Show. Tune in each week on Transformation Talk Radio as Cornelia takes listeners on an odyssey of higher consciousness to inspire, educate, and empower. Cornelia guides people on the path of self-healing, peace, and liberation. The Cornelia Stephanie Show is your catalyst for anchoring heaven on earth on a global scale. For more information, go to corneliastephanie.com.
Welcome back, listeners, to Spirit Fire Radio and our discussion on forgiveness. We're going to cover forgiveness for the entire month of November, so we hope you will join us. So, Dorothy, before the break, I was talking a bit about Ho'oponopono and this idea of forgiving oneself and its relation to the other. And for you, any words about self-forgiveness? Anything you'd like to share?
Well, I think it's there's a certain tension in the self-forgiveness process. One aspect of it is being very clear-sighted about what we did, the harm that we caused, and accepting responsibility for that, and at the same time loving ourselves in our humanity. It doesn't work to beat up on ourselves. We need to be as kind towards ourselves as we are towards other people. So that self-loved and accepting responsibility. And then one of the critical things in forgiving ourselves is that usually when we do something, I mean, sometimes we do something that does not involve other people, but oftentimes it does. Oftentimes our offense is an interpersonal offense. And so then in that instance, we need to accept responsibility clearly with the other person, and we need to re-earn the trust that makes relationship possible if we want to continue to be in relationship, whether it's friends, family, partners, whatever it is. But I think what's critical here in that process of thinking about how we forgive ourselves is to recognize that we can't expect that trust to just be reinstated instantaneously, that it does need to be earned.
Yes. And you're talking about not only trust in another person directly, but just I would think as well the capacity to trust on on a general scale as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And sometimes it's not just a matter of earning somebody else's trust, but earning our own trust.
Right.
Because one of the key differences to me between forgiving somebody else and forgiving ourselves is that when I forgive somebody else, it needs to be unconditional. I mean, either I'm going to do it or I'm not going to do it. If I'm going to do it, then it's done. And I can't keep, as you mentioned, going and dragging it back up into arguments or whatever and saying, oh, well, you did that so-and-so at such and such a time. But with myself, for me, oftentimes the restoration process is a conditional one, that I forgive myself on the condition that I will do this in the future or I will not do this in the future. So I do feel that there is a commitment to change, which is different than when I'm forgiving somebody else.
Right.
When I'm forgiving myself,
I do find it interesting that you call that conditions, that I will forgive myself on the condition. I understand exactly what you mean, but it is very interesting that we can sort of impose, that you would put it in those words of almost imposing a condition, whereas I sort of see it, and I'm certain you mean it this way, that you've come to an understanding and you're saying, I will hold myself in a sense to this standard so as to not allow that to happen again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes. Yes, it's a different way of putting it, but yes. And I need to recognize that it takes time to make a change, right? So I have to give myself time to try a new behavior, screw up, try the new behavior again, screw up. For me, there's oftentimes a 3, like the third time, the gear catches, so to speak, and I don't revert again. But it's not necessarily on the first time.
Yeah. Cycles. This world it's why we're on a spinning planet, right? Cycles. I also find that we really can only assess ourselves. We may never know another person's truth, and that comes back to trust again. And in that we're really only responsible for ourselves and our happiness, and we can only be. And it is really dependent upon our own alignment, our capacity to offer empathy or compassion, forgiveness, and not expect that of others. It comes again to this idea that forgiveness of others is unconditional, because otherwise, once again, you are giving up power. And that word power is a little tricky, but it is really about alignment. You are allowing conditions or somebody else's acts to throw you out of alignment. And so, I find that in forgiving ourselves, it can be really strong and really firm, because we reestablish an alignment, and we can understand the growth that we've experienced from the process. And again, as I was saying, set the bar higher, to have grown and evolved, and say, I will see that the next time, right? Like I will recognize the signs, or that may not happen the next time. And then it's about not judging another when you see them making the same mistake, but knowing that, well, it won't happen to you. It won't affect me. I can create the space for that person to err, and it really will not affect me. Wouldn't that be a lovely place to be in all the time?
But again, we come back to that clarity at the beginning, that if, I know with my partner and with friends, one of the things that matters a lot to me is that if they do something that is hurtful or that is inappropriate, or that they fail to do something that they promised to do, that they speak right up and they say, I recognize that this is what I've done. I recognize that this was the consequence for you. And I'm sorry. And then we can move on from that. And I need to be able to have that same clarity about myself and be able to say it to them. And, to anyone in my environment, and as well as to myself, that instead of kind of sliding over and say, well, it wasn't that bad. No, this is something that I did that is not congruent with my own internal ethics. It's that moral compass again, that I have moved off of true north, so to speak, and that's not acceptable to me, and this is why it happened, and this is what I need to change so that it doesn't happen again.
Yeah. Are you ready, Dorothy, for me to get you just a little bit riled up?
Sure. Go for it.
I'm just going to bring this up. I found it so interesting several weeks back, when he who shall not be named, the president of the United States, had that news story where, he was offering condolences to a fallen soldier, and really offended, really offended the widow, and she was hurt, and he just could not rise above and bring clarity to the situation, which would have been so easy to basically just say, if I hurt you, and I know that I did, because you have said my feelings were just really hurt, to just buck up and say, wow, I'm sorry I hurt you. It was not my intention. This is new for me. This is a really hard job, and I apologize for hurting you. So it just shows how, hubris, like how it just creates even more distortion. We saw in that whole situation how simple it would have been to just name what you did, that everybody would have understand. I mean, even people who just can't stand this guy and just think he's just the, evil incarnate. But to see, well, all right, I can see how this situation might be complicated. You got a lot going on. Just to say, here's what I did, I'm sorry, would have cleared so much, and instead left so much distortion and so much pain.
Well, and there is a companion piece that I saw on the news today. So this is still continuing on, where General Kelly, who got up and tried to defend the president and ended up saying things that were not truthful about the congresswoman that was in the car, and he has said once again that he has no intention of apologizing.
Yeah.
So you've got two people there together, both involved in that scenario. And yes, and think of the pain, the additional pain that's caused by unnecessary, completely unnecessary.
And wouldn't we all like, I'm sorry to jump in, but wouldn't we all like to know that they are right by themselves, because they're leaders and they have a lot of power? And we would like to know that those of us who ponder forgiveness and we see a situation that clearly, to know that they are deliberately not getting right with themselves, because there's no way they could possibly think they're right in this situation. It's unhuman. Mm-hmm. And you see that it's just hubris. Yeah.
Well, and we also see that in order for the two women who were involved, the two black women who were involved, that they're the ones that are going to have to do the work to let that go.
Absolutely.
And talk
about a process.
Yes, exactly.
But Dorothy, we all send them. I send them so much love. My goodness, if quantum physics, and it is a fact that we can hold them in the space of our heart and offer them, even just energetically through the morphogenetic field, compassion, empathy, support, that they may find forgiveness. So we're at another break, Dorothy. When we come back, here we go. This idea of like, this is really serious. And, perhaps some situations we don't get over or we can't get over. And is that okay? We're going to talk about that, listeners, when we come back.
The
Knowledge Book, currently studied in 39 countries and 15 languages around the world, accelerates our evolution, takes us out of depression, offers universal truth, protects us, and makes us stronger, both spiritually and physically. So if you are interested in the Knowledge Book, visit usa.theknowledgebook.net and tune in to the Knowledge Book Radio with Marge Potasic on TransformationTalkRadio.com.
Amber Teal, founder of The Healthy Edge, is bringing you the hit show Healthy Edge Radio, living with power, passion, and purpose. Amber provides the support and tools necessary for you to finally release the weight and emotions that are hidden beneath the weight. Tune in each month on Transformation Talk Radio. For more information on how you can take the next step with Amber, visit getthehealthyedge.com.
Isn't it time to put your health first, to give yourself the gift of whole body wellness? What if embracing unconditional love and self-care was the first step to wellness? Could you honor that for yourself? My name is Audrey Michelle, host of Rewired Life Radio and the author of Rewired Life, A Journey to Untangle Chronic Pain and Endometriosis. In my book, I share how I healed from 17 years of chronic pain and disease. Get your signed copy at audreymichelle.com/book, spelled MICHEL.com/book.
Tune in to the Psychic Professors Show, The Voices of Spirit Radio, with international medium and spirit artist Dr. Susan Barnes on Transformation Talk Radio, featuring a variety of spiritual topics such as psychic art, spiritualism, EVP, psychic development, and mediumship. This hit call-in show provides listeners with breakthrough wisdom to enliven and enlighten their lives. Visit spiritartgallery.net.
Tune in each Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern on Transformation Talk Radio.
The Truth is Funny. Shift Happens with Colette Marie Steffen is excited to welcome Karen Benton as a monthly guest host. Tune in on the third Wednesday of each month at 8 a.m. Pacific Time to regain confidence and trust in your capacity to create change in your life, your health, your family, and your well-being. Karen Benton is a mother, nurse practitioner, certified body talk practitioner, Franklin Method instructor, and owner of Limitless Living LLC. For more information about Karen, visit KarenBenton.com.
Wow. Hey, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the Dr. Pat Show. This is Talk Radio to Thrive By. I'm telling you, I got to pinch myself some days because when each of us gets called to do something that we so not thought was in our wheelhouse to do for a purpose that's so much greater than us, we get to show up and shine.
If you would like to show up and shine on the Dr. Pat Show as a co-host or sponsor, send us an email to inspire@thedrpatshow.com.
Welcome back to Spirit Fire Radio. Dorothy and I are going to spend the entire month talking about forgiveness, and it's been a lovely show, really interesting conversation. As always, Dorothy, thank you for all that you bring to the table. And I'm curious, you had mentioned listeners, we often talk a bit about the show before we go on air, and Dorothy wanted to talk about instances that it's okay, when it's okay not to forgive. And I found that intriguing. When is it okay not to forgive? Because, goodness, we have seen some just reprehensible crimes against humanity in the last many years. And that's what comes to mind. And we didn't go into it much in our conversation off air. So I'd like to ask on air, is that a bit of what you're talking about? Is this sort of acts that just seem beyond the scope of forgiveness?
Well, I think, to me, I was thinking about it a little bit differently because I do believe that it's critical for us to be able to detach from the past and embrace the present and heal ourselves so that we are not controlled by what happened. But I think there are times when we do not have to, we are not required to actually tell somebody, especially an abuser, a bully, someone who has been very, very harmful. We don't need to say to them, I forgive you. We can choose to do that. but I think it's really the internal process that is so critical. And I'd like to give an illustration, if I could, Steve, of a situation where I was. I won't get into some of the surrounding details, but basically, I was in a situation where I was I had poor health. I needed to take a leave of absence from my workplace, and the people who were in charge or had been given the power to make the decision had the ability to grant me a leave with pay and with health insurance or not. It was their choice. And they chose to insist that I take the leave without pay. It was a leave I had to take. I ultimately ended up having major surgery. And they also refused to allow my health insurance to continue. So I was in a situation where I had to find a way to pay for this major surgery, which is not inexpensive, as we know from all the debates that have been going on about health care in the U.S. I was living in the U.S. at the time.
And they knew that this was an issue, that healthcare was
right.
essential. So
that's
wow.
right. And it wasn't going to cost them anything, right?
Yeah.
They were not individually paying for my health insurance.
Right.
It was a really nasty thing to do, and it was very hurtful, as you can imagine. And for a long time, I left. I did not return to that employment when I could have returned to employment. I moved on. And it was years later when I finally was able to go through a process of releasing that and basically forgiving them, but not saying to them, they don't exist as a group anymore. I haven't gone to the institution to say this. But I was able, in reflecting on it, to recognize that I had been able to take elements of what happened and change them, change so that I got a benefit from it. Not that this excused what they did, but I recognized that because they refused me my health insurance and my salary, I felt in no obligation to return to what was actually a very toxic work environment. And it was good that I moved on. And that recognition was part of what helped me to release the anger and the resentment and the desire for revenge. And so for me, it's like it was a forgiveness process. I did release it, but I don't feel any need to try to find the people and tell them that I forgive them. Does that make sense?
It does. And what I'm hearing in that is almost a trust in the universe, and in that there's perfection we can find perfection in so many circumstances. It is really the freedom of how do we look at a situation that you could move on from that and say, well, it freed you in a way, right? Like you were no longer you had no obligation to them any longer and no connection to them, and you were free, and it was as it should be. Maybe not the easiest way to come to that, but perhaps you wouldn't have otherwise, is what I'm hearing you say.
Yes, but I do want to caution our listeners. I'm not saying that you have to find a benefit in a violently abusive situation in order
but that you
to
can
free
come
yourself.
to an understanding that you can actually, it's not about silver linings always so much, but about that perhaps there can be, through this process, one comes to an understanding, and even in hindsight can look back and say, wow, okay, well, this is what that gave me. I guess that is silver linings, huh?
Right. Or this is what I learned. This is the strength that I got from the situation.
Right.
But I think
you have.
I think there are situations where I'm thinking of some of the bullying situations that I'm aware of, or domestic abuse situations, where sometimes there's pressure from an external party to interact with the bully or with the abuser and forgive them. And I don't know that is necessary, and I don't know that it is appropriate. It is critical to do the internal healing so that you're not controlled by the situation anymore. But I'm not convinced that I have to necessarily give the other person the gift of forgiveness.
Yes, absolutely. And it is really then about finding our inner alignment and our balance. The whole last month we talked about balance. Through that process of understanding, we, in a sense, reach a place where forgiveness is no longer necessary in that way, because there is a stability and an understanding and a clarity within you of the situation that if you were ever in front of that bully again, things would be different because you are different. You are changed as a result of that experience. You have grown, you have evolved, you have found an inner stability that was not there before. So it's not saying it's all good and I'm glad it happened, but it's that I have found as a result of that situation an alignment and a balance. And should I confront that person again, I don't need to forgive them, but I certainly will not be the same person, right?
That's true. Now, if I want an ongoing relationship with that person,
yes,
then I do need to have that interactive forgiveness.
Yes.
Because we have to clear the air, and we have to find a way to move forward, to rebuild trust, all of those kinds of things. But if I don't want to or need to interact with the offender, the abuser, the bully, then I need to feel free to not.
Yeah, and that the reconciliation is really just within oneself, and that is perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said before, separate from forgiveness. So, Dorothy, we're at the end of our show. Listeners, we're going to continue this conversation for several more weeks. It is fascinating. We are going to dive into ways we can generate forgiveness and just go deep into, again, these aspects of ways that forgiveness moves us along the spiritual path and brings a greater awareness into our lives of ourselves, of others, and our place, right, Dorothy, within the one life. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to our show next week. Dorothy, thanks so much, and listeners, thank you.
I look forward to it too. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Spirit Fire Radio. Tune in each Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 noon Eastern for your weekly guide to purposeful living and practical spirituality. Join hosts Steve Kramer and Dorothy Riddle as they shine the light on universal spiritual principles and uncover ways that ageless wisdom can guide you in cultivating consciousness in your everyday life. Add to your awareness with Spirit Fire Radio. To learn more, visit spiritfireradio.com.